Thank you, Kieran. I'm going to elaborate on your introduction there. And thanks, everybody, for joining me today. Hopefully, I can give you some insights into the best ways to implement the right no-code tech stack. So let's start. I'm going to elaborate on the story. So just a little bit about me. I run a consulting agency called Solvaa. We also have an academy where we teach people about automation. We are Zero certified advisors, Pipedrive certified partners, Smart Suite certified consultants, and Zapier certified experts. So I'll tell you a little bit more about the whole veterinary, the veterinary practice story. Actually, my history goes a little bit further back because I actually started as a very sciencey type person. I did a degree in microbiology and zoology, and I worked in pharmaceutical and medical device manufacturing, so I was in a lab coat all day, very different to what I'm doing now. And I very quickly realized that what I loved the most about that industry was actually improving the way that people work, so helping them to do their jobs better. Now, that was specifically about manufacturing better quality pharmaceutical products, so needles, syringes, and that kind of thing that were going out into the marketplace that hopefully, if the quality was good, they're not going to kill people. So that's what we were trying to do. But I got into the process improvement mentality, loved it, then eventually left that, had this brilliant idea to open a vet practice with a friend who was a vet. And I didn't have any experience with going into the small business world. This was a new thing for me. And like very many small business owners, I had to wear multiple hats. So I was doing a lot of the marketing, the sales, all of the operations, HR, all of that kind of stuff. So my partner was doing all the clinical stuff, and I was handling a lot of the kind of operational, business development, all of that kind of stuff. That is true, that I was spending so much time being inefficient, had no idea that there were tools on the market that could help us. Obviously, we had a few things in place like MailChimp and, we had a practice management system, but nothing was connected together. And it was obviously very frustrating. And it was, 2010 when we started. And I think that was around the time where Zapier and a lot of other no-code automation tools, in fact, I think Zapier was probably the only one on the market at that time. That's when they were kind of developing their tools. I still had no idea that that kind of stuff actually existed. So many, many nights, 60-plus hours a week, doing VAT returns on a Sunday evening, when the deadline was the next day, and eventually found a few tools that could make our lives easier, had a very efficient business by the time I left, but I was ready then to move on to other things. And as Kieran mentioned, I came across a client that I started working with because I was in this new situation. I was like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I actually didn't know. I'd left that business, moved on. I thought, okay, I'm going to do some freelancing. Started doing some bookkeeping because that's what I was doing in the practice a lot of the time, and actually managed to, with all of my kind of process improvement knowledge, project management, and all of that kind of stuff, and my good understanding of apps that were available on the market, helped this client of mine to automate their entire bookkeeping process, and I basically did myself out of a job. And my client said to me, hey, you're actually pretty good at this. Why don't you think about doing this for a living? I was like, whoa, okay, that's interesting. And that's actually where I started using Zapier a lot. And that, that moment in my practice where I'd realized that these things could actually help you to be more efficient, it kind of started me on my journey. So, yes, Zapier was like the start of all of this for me. And I've gone from, being one person in my business to there are quite a few of us, and there are less than 100 certified Zapier experts in the world. I think we're, less than 5 in the UK. So that's a little bit about me. So the important thing that we're here to talk about today is how do you choose what you choose? We're also going to talk about process improvement methodologies to get there, and we're also going to look at some case studies of some work that we've done with clients. So before we start, I just wanted to hear a little bit from all of you, just so I can understand who's here for what purpose. If you're here because you're looking to implement NoCode in your business for yourself or your team, could you put your hand up, please? Great. If you're here because you're a builder, you already know about NoCode, and you are like deep in there because you're trying to build stuff for yourself, put your hand up. Great. And if you're wanting to build stuff for other people, so that could be people in your team, like if you're part of another company and you're doing it for other people in your team in an ops role or something like that, or you're looking to build an app and sell it, could you put your hand up, please? Great, so a variety of people, thank you. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about mostly today is about how you can go about using process improvement methodologies that many people have probably heard of, all of this kind of like Lean, Six Sigma, Kaizen, 5S, 5W, 1H, all of these words that might seem like a mystery to a lot of people. I'm going to cover just a snapshot of some of those, but I just want to help you to understand why all of that stuff is really important when you're trying to find tools to use, whether or not that's for yourself in your business. You're building something, but you also may want to use something off the shelf that you can kind of put into the mix. So, how do you choose? Please forgive me for all the animation. I tried to take it out earlier, but for some reason it didn't work. So, few things that I think are important, and I'm basing this on, one, us as an agency that helps other businesses to find the right tools and build their tech stack, and that could be with off-the-shelf solutions like a CRM, or it could be with no-code bespoke solutions, and kind of integrating all of those tools together to make something that's going to work wonderfully for them. So I think part of the thing that you do need to take into consideration is the user experience. So how easy is it going to be for the people who are going to use this? So, for example, if you have you're working in a team and several people are not that tech savvy, and you're trying to build something for a bunch of people who are really going to struggle to adopt the technology, that's something that you do need to take into consideration. So the choice that you make and the route that you go down really does need to consider user experience and tech savviness. What's the budget? So again, obviously, there are going to be different situations, whether or not you're looking for yourself or you're looking for somebody else or you're building it yourself. That needs to be an important factor to take into consideration. The timelines for the build. So is it going to be more practical to find an off-the-shelf solution that you can customize as much as possible, but they're going to be things that you won't be able to do, and that's where maybe a no-code solution will come in that you can integrate together with that other solution. That needs to be taken into consideration as well. Integrations and automations. So if you're thinking about having multiple tools together, and I'm going to give you some examples of this. So if you're thinking about multiple tools that you're going to have together, should you be thinking about native integrations versus custom-built automations with Zapier or Make, for example? And I know there are a few other no-code automation tools out there as well. The level of ongoing support. So same situation, if we're going back to people in a team that aren't very tech-savvy, don't have a lot of experience, are going to need much more support than if somebody really knows what they're doing, they understand what the system is. So that's important to take into consideration. And of course, this is the most critical thing, which I find, basically, if you are looking for something for somebody else, or you're looking for something for yourself, or whatever the situation is, ultimately, there is going to be some bias in terms of what tools you understand are going to be the right tools for somebody else. So a lot of this comes from experience. And when you don't have the experience, you do have to spend a lot of time researching those type of tools. Obviously, AI is going to help. You know, ChatGPT, do some prompting with ChatGPT that's going to give you some short lists maybe. But ultimately, you're going to need to do research to find the right tools and then shortlist them. And then obviously your experience is going to take into consideration what might be the right combination for you. So I'm just going to go through all of these, have them all up here. So again, some words that maybe not everybody understands or knows. I'm not going to go into every single one of them, but ultimately, process improvement is super important for building a tech stack. And this should be taken into consideration at every point. So things like brainstorming, making sure that you understand the process by process mapping, as well as doing an investigative exercise so that you understand why things are done and how things are done. So that's the 5W1H. The Deming cycle and continuous improvement cycle, those are kind of similar. So Deming cycle, I actually never know if it's Deming or Deming cycle, but anyway. Plan, do, check, act fits really nicely in with the continuous improvement cycle because ultimately a business is never going to be the same. It's always going to evolve. There's never going to be anything stagnant, hopefully, because if it's stagnant, probably it's never going to be profitable. But ultimately, by thinking that you're always going to be going through a process where you're reevaluating the situation, checking in with what you've got in your tech stack, making sure that what is relevant, was relevant 6 months ago is really relevant now to the way that you're using things. That's super important. And then we've got jidoka and Kaizen. I love jidoka. It actually, I think the word is I can't even pronounce it. Never mind. Basically, it means an automation that checks the automation. So these are traditionally terms that were used in Toyota and obviously the manufacturing industry where you've got machinery, robotics being used for the purpose of manufacturing cars. And what jidoka actually is a check for the process. So this is one thing that I really like because it makes sure that whenever you have issues in your process and the tools that you're using, you have a method that will check for issues, and then you can go back and address that. To give you an example of what I'm talking about here is when you're building no-code automations with tools like Zapier and Make, it's good practice to put in place a maintenance automation that checks that there are no issues with that automation. So if you have errors that you run into, you have something in place to make sure you can go and quickly address those errors and those issues, make changes, and keep that checking going. Kaizen is actually the same as continuous improvement. And then we've also got total quality management, which is what I really want to talk about next. So total quality management. Again, I'm just going to go. Again, I don't know why I put the animation in, but anyway. Total quality management. This is something, if you remember nothing from this talk today, except for this is a super important thing because ultimately with any tool that you might want to put in place, whether or not you're building something from scratch with no-code or you're taking something off the shelf and integrating it with other things using no-code automation, total quality management is something that you should always be bearing in mind, whether or not it's for customers, whether or not it's for you and your team. These are the key things that you want to take into consideration. Is it customer-focused? Is it process-centered? Has it got total employee involvement or team involvement or contractor involvement? Does it promote integrated systems? Is it strategic and has a systematic approach? Does it promote continual improvement, as I mentioned earlier on, Kaizen, continuous improvement cycle? Fact-based decision-making, and does it allow effective communication? So those should be the kind of baseline for anything that you build, anything that you're putting in place when you're thinking of the right tech stack. So we use a kind of combination of all of these methodologies in the way that we work with our clients. So we have 4 steps ultimately in the process of our consulting. We have an identify step where we do a process audit with our clients so that we can understand the way that they're working right now, what the current situation is, what they want to achieve, objectives, what the pain points are, and we're covering all of those little holes. Then we do the planning, which ultimately is, that could be research, that could be identifying what the right tools are to use. Again, combination of research, combination of our experience and knowledge. That's also going to involve us putting together the architecture for what this is going to look like. So if we're building an app with SmartSuite, for example, and we know that we have to connect it with something else in their process, we're designing the architecture and also designing how everything is going to connect together. What workflows are we going to use? Then obviously we're going to execute all of that. So that involves sprints and project planning and all of that to get to where we want to get to, and that's involving users at every point in the journey. And I think one thing to just go back to as well is, as part of the identify and starting and going through all this process, ultimately what we're trying to do here is involve all the right people in the process, which is not always possible to do that. If you have a team of 70 people, and all of these people are going to be using this particular thing that you're trying to build, what it's not possible to do is involve every single person in that business. But we have a system where we get everybody involved in the sense of we help the business to identify who the champions are in that business, who can help us to promote the things that we're trying to do so that eventually everybody's going to be onboarded and on board with what we're trying to implement. So execute, and then the review part is obviously the plan, do, check, act type of situation where we're making sure that everything is good and we're making improvements as we go along. And then that kind of just continues in a continuous improvement cycle. So I just want to give you a couple of case studies, examples of businesses that we've worked with where we've gone from a certain situation where they've had either nothing in their business whatsoever and what we created for them, or they may have a few tools, but they weren't really fit for purpose, and we've used NoCode to put together the right tech stack. So let me go back, actually. So this first example is they're essentially white hat hackers, so security vulnerability testers. And this particular client that we've been working with had pretty much, this was their tech stack. And I'll tell you what the question marks in the middle were. So they had Salesforce for their CRM. They weren't using it very well. It was a typical situation where they put something in place because they thought it was a great thing to have. Other people may have recommended it to them, but they were actually using a CRM with a lot of functionality, and they actually were using it in a very, very basic way, spending a lot of money unnecessarily. So that was their CRM. They were pretty much using Outlook for communications, and they had built themselves a £150,000 developed, coded platform where they were doing all their project management, all their document storage. There was a lot of security things, and that's why they wanted their own platform. But they developed this over years, and it got to the point where it was so inflexible that they couldn't actually change anything anymore because it would have cost them a lot of money. So they were looking for a no-code solution that was going to help them to improve the way that they were working. So ultimately what we did, going through our cycle, our Solvaa methodology of working, we helped them to identify that actually, and I did actually forget that their accounting as well was also part of this project management tool that they had built. So we helped them to implement SmartSuite, get rid of Salesforce completely, so the CRM functionality and their project management functionality was all put into SmartSuite. For those of you who don't know what SmartSuite is, it's very similar to Airtable. Their email was still there. SmartSuite just released a feature where you can integrate the emails and see all email communications, which is great. They implemented Xero, which was another big change for them. And we also used fill-out forms for some things that they needed to collect information from. So we did have a combination of forms within Smart Suite, as well as fill-out forms where we needed to do a little bit, slightly more complex things. And we basically tied everything together with Zapier where we needed to. And again, we could have decided to use Make. One thing that I should mention here in terms of choices and tech stack, Make versus Zapier, I think a lot of people are really going to choose something that they're more familiar with, but the reason that we choose Zapier is because we like to empower the clients that we're working with to ultimately take on what we've built for them. So we're not having to put them into a retainer or anything. We're just basically getting them to learn everything that we've built for them, and they can take control of it. So Zapier is a much easier tool for us to teach our clients to use than something like Make. And obviously, there are lots of pros and cons for all of them. So this was the ideal tech stack that we created for them. And what I just wanted to show you was an example of this. So this is just a demo, so there's no live information in here. But we built this CRM for them that looked pretty much identical to Salesforce. And we built a project management tool for them as well that had everything that they needed in it to be able to run their business. Had some forms created and a whole bunch of automations that were in Smart Suite as well as in Zapier. I know I'm flicking through all of these very quickly, but the next stage for us is now helping them to build a customer portal, and we're going to be using Loco for that. Last one, we've got a nanny agency that we work with. Now, this one is a pretty crazy one that client that we've worked with, where basically the main tech that they had was Xero, Outlook, OneDrive, and everything else they were doing on paper. They had all their client records on paper. They were storing card details. Obviously, I can't tell you who this client is because they were storing card details illegally, keeping them in a safe, and then just processing the payments that they needed to go through every single month using Lloyd's CardNet. So what we did for them was we used a combination of Pipedrive, which again is an off-the-shelf CRM, which can be customized to what a business needs. But the reason that we chose something rather than building everything on Airtable, for example, because they needed a CRM, but they also needed something to manage timesheets on a monthly basis for their nannies, was because, again, going back to the tech savviness, they were very not tech savvy and literally needed a lot of hand-holding, and we knew that there was no way that they were going to be able to cope with a tool like Airtable. So we built something for them, customized an off-the-shelf tool which was easy for them to use and get used to, and tied that in with Airtable, put in place Stripe, Go Cardless for direct debits, and the Stripe for one-off payments, and everything was integrated with Xero using Zapier, and then we've obviously got their OneDrive and emails. So just very quick, again, I've had to anonymize a lot of this stuff, but ultimately, pipeline within Pipedrive, their timesheets within Airtable, a lot of automations within Pipedrive as well as Airtable, and Zapier, of course, and that is it. So I think we've got do we have a few minutes for some questions if anybody wants to ask any questions? And before I finish, please connect with me. You can check out my website, solvaa.co.uk. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I've got some cards if you want some. And yeah, all good. Thank you.
So what convinced you to try Zapier, and how did you find it in the first place? And then how do people find you?
Okay, so how did I find it in the first place? Pure accident. I was kind of just looking for things to make the business more efficient. And to be honest, I can't remember exactly how I found it, but it was probably completely accidental. I think I might have been trying to connect MailChimp to something and knew that I couldn't do it. And I was totally clueless then. But that was when I found Zapier, and I thought, and by the way, actually, for anybody who doesn't know, Zapier makes you happier is their tagline. And so it's actually Zapier, not Zapier. So yeah, little thing that I get there. So what was the other question? How do people find me now? LinkedIn, through the website, YouTube, my book. Great people like the NoCode's ops community who are very supportive of us. Yeah.
Hi. You talked about building a CRM in an Airtable equivalent platform. Do you not grow out of that quite quickly? What was the reason behind that? I understand you're talking about Pipedrive and how that's user-friendly. I think that sounds great, but do you not grow out of an Airtable-like CRM quite quickly?
Yeah, so that's another kind of important thing to bear in mind when you're choosing the solution. How scalable is it? So I feel that certain platforms that are not built, so the CRM is a totally different environment, because I feel like building a CRM sometimes with a no-code solution like Airtable, you're making a lot of compromises on certain things. Where if you have an off-the-shelf solution that you still can customize, and you can automate a whole lot of stuff, and you can integrate it with lots of different tools, maybe that's a better solution, but again, it depends on the situation, it depends on the client. So yeah, I mean, exactly that. I think using a tool that you can customize like Airtable, Smart Suite, or you're building something from scratch with whatever you're choosing to use, that sometimes can be a limitation when you know that Pipedrive or HubSpot might be a really good solution for them, and they've spent millions on building something that is really going to be good for the sales process. I think you should be deciding on what size of team it is, how much are they going to use it, what features and functionality are they going to use, and again, whether or not Airtable is going to be a scalable solution.
Hi, thanks so much for the talk. It's really interesting.
Thank you.
I found the Solvaa methodology slide quite interesting. I took a photo, hope you don't mind, where you had your identify, plan, execute, and review. I was interested, if you don't mind sharing, at what point are you able to ask the client for money? Do you have to do the identify bit kind of up front, so you're going in with a bit of a knowledge of their problems, and then provide a plan that you then sell to them? Or are you able to get buy-in a bit earlier on and sell them on the whole kind of process?
That's a really good question. I think just to first of all mention, I'm sure that lots of people do things in different ways. For us, that whole process is part of a service that we offer, which is a billable service, because ultimately we're helping businesses from the very beginning to actually identify where they've got problems. So all of the identify part is so critical for us to be able to understand them as a business, spend time with them, you know, understand them as people, because that's an important part of the process as well. And then obviously go through that whole bigger picture to understand how they're doing things right now, where the bottlenecks are, where the inefficiencies are, and what they really want. So yes, that is time that we spend. Actually, it's a lot of the time that we spend up front to be able to produce a plan for them, a blueprint of how everything is going to look. So absolutely, that is time that we bill for. Yeah. Okay, sure.
How did you scale yourself from just being one person doing this for clients to like building a whole agency where I think, as you said, you have some employees as well. So how did you scale up?
Time. I mean, maybe some people can do it very quickly. For me, it's been a process. I wanted, for a long time, I actually just wanted to do it myself. And I thought, great, I can handle this, you know, I could manage stuff. And I actually used to subcontract work to different people because I thought, yeah, okay, when I've got, an excess of stuff, I'll pass it on to somebody else. But something actually, and this is quite personal, something happened. My mum passed away, And before that, she was ill for quite a long time, and I was spending a lot of time with her. And that was actually the point where I realized, you know what, I can't work. I can't earn a living if I'm, things happen. You've got parents, everybody's got responsibilities and family stuff. And I actually realized that I need to start building a team. So it was like a kind of personal moment for me that made me realize that I needed to be bringing on people. And that's kind of happened all very quickly. So in the last 3.5 years, I've gone from just pretty much me and maybe a VA that I was using to, I think there are 8 of us in the team now.
Okay, thanks for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.